Let me introduce our guest, Robert Arthur. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hi, Charles. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. Glad we finally connected there. We had a confusion, I guess, over the time last week, I think you were booked, right?
Well, we didn't have a confusion. I had a confusion, but that's kind of you to use the we.
Your specialty is land rights, and I guess you got the same thing going on up there in Canada, eh?
Well, I don't know that I would claim my specialty as land rights per se, but I have been studying the law quite extensively, and some of what I've been uncovering is being used for land rights. And specifically, I'm in southwestern Ontario here, or Ontario anyways, for the purpose of trying to help some farmers stop the government from coming in and taking land for what is essentially going to be a private highway. It's an extension of a toll highway, but they claim it'll be a toll highway, but it'll be owned by the people of Ontario, but they did that with the last portion and then sold it to an Italian conglomerate, so now nobody's gaining any benefit at all. And up here, we're a little bit peeved about that kind of thing. We prefer benefits like that to go to the population. If you'd like a little bit of background, essentially what I found up here is the power that a claim of right has. And it seems to be effective, or at least found in just about every common law jurisdiction. And the power of it is, as an example, there was a young kid down in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, apparently they were going through, corporations would come in, look at some land, want the land, offer enough money on it that the tax rate would shoot through the roof, but not enough that the people would want to accept it. A lot of this was Maori land and traditional land. And they would say no, but then they couldn't afford the property taxes. So they would get kicked off, and the corporation would then come in and in cahoots with the municipalities buy the land far cheaper. So this one kid, he ended up going on what is essentially crown land up here, or common land. And he built a small house, and the developers in the municipality didn't like that. They took him to court. Court ordered him to tear down his house or he would go to jail. He didn't know what to do, spoke to a friend of mine down there, and crafted and served what is called a claim of right. And he went back in 30 days later. He hadn't torn down his house, and the judge asked him why, and he ended up showing him the claim of right that he had served. He pointed out that in the criminal code of New Zealand, or what they call the Crimes Act 1961, that property held under a claim of right can be defended using whatever level of force is necessary, even against persons legally entitled to that property. Then he pointed out that the definition of theft was the removal of property without a claim of right, pointed out that the judge didn't have one, and if he tried removing his property, he'd be committing fraud and theft and all sorts of stuff. And the judge immediately overturned his own order. And a bunch of Maoris down there have been protecting their property this way, and on October 18th, I believe, they are doing it en masse. Their entire nation is going to be serving a notice of understanding and intent and a claim of right. So there's huge things happening, and it's a matter, I found, of looking for remedy instead of reasons to keep fighting or pointing fingers.
This law is actually something that's international.
What I found, it developed because in the Criminal Code of Canada, if you look at Section 38 and 39, it looks at holding property under a claim of right and holding property not under a claim of right. If you have a claim of right, you can use whatever level of force is necessary, even against persons who have a legal right to it. If you don't, you can't. So under that, you can see that a claim of right is a lawful excuse for engaging in an action that otherwise would be an unlawful action. Then you look to Section 126 and 127 of the Criminal Code, and it will tell you that you do have the right to disobey any court or any government statute if you have a lawful excuse. And when you read that section, it's quite funny the way they put it in there. If they were reading it in the town center kind of thing, screaming it out loud, they'd be going, anyone who with a lawful excuse. And then they talk about the punishments that could come to you. They don't want you to know what is and is not a lawful excuse. And a lawful excuse, if you look to New Zealand Crimes Act, and you find the exact same section, it's worded slightly differently, and what they change is, they change the without lawful excuse to without claim of right.
I don't know how it is up in Canada, but now local townships all over the U.S., if you're a senior citizen and you don't have your house willed officially, if you don't, and a lot of seniors, they can't even afford to go through the legal proceedings to do this.
Oh, yeah, and there's a big problem.
They'll take your house.
Oh, it's even worse. They're not even waiting till you die up in Alberta. They've got this thing where people come in and will declare a senior citizen as incompetent, and once you're so declared, then those people have the right to your property and to administer it for you, but they will pick you up and lock you in an old folks home, and if you try to leave, they treat you like a prisoner, and it's amazingly sickening up here. But
and of course, even if you do have the house willed, if you become that way here, incompetent, they pretty much do the same thing. Well, they won't come in and force you, but they pressure you. And then once you're in there, you can't bequeath your home because they'll drain your assets.
Or they'll claim that your will was you weren't competent at the time. But again,
if you put it in a nursing home, they'll drain. Go ahead.
Again, there's always remedy, and to look at what they're doing and then just get angry about it without looking for the remedy, I think doesn't really help anyone.
Right.
And I think at least what I have found in law here, and a lot of my studies was a result of looking at what was in the United States and then looking for similarities here. So a lot of people look at the stuff that I try to teach and they say, well, is it applicable here? And yet it's down there where I first learned about most of the stuff, including the claim of right and the notice of understanding and intent.
Wow. So do you have anything for, this would apply, I guess, to seniors too, right, that have this problem, to get their home taken away?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I don't see why it wouldn't. And I know that other people are using it up here for, just about everything. They're using it to discharge student loans. They're using it to deal with demands made by the courts or by the CRA, the revenue agency up here. And there's always been remedy, but one of their tricks is to get us to fight them. They entice us to fight them, and they make us think that that's the way that we are going to succeed. And I look at it kind of like playing football. If your goal is to get the ball across the goal line, why spend all your time and energy trying to fight the people between you and that goal line? Ideally, you want to deke them and avoid them completely. I've got a website, and we do have packages available, but I've also made all of the stuff that you can get in the package available free online. Because to me, I can tear down all of the fences that surround myself, but if I'm surrounded by people who have erected their own fences, how free am I? And it's thinkfree.ca, and we have a forum up there as well, and there's a lot of people achieving a great deal of good up here anyways. And what we have found is that when you go through the process properly, the people that normally you might fear, like the peace officers, they're not your enemy. You don't treat them as your enemy, and if you can just show them the path, because these people, they wouldn't accept an order to go beat up a toddler. They wouldn't accept that order because they know it's unlawful. If you serve a notice of your understanding and intent and a claim of right, and you do it through a notary public, you can create a situation where any order from a court against you would be unlawful, and they would have a duty to know this. So it's about us trying to educate them and doing it without the fear and without the anger and without pointing fingers at them. When you treat peace officers like that up here anyway, some of them, I'm sure there's bad apples everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Respond quite positively.
Okay, welcome back to Truth Earth Radio. It's your host, Charlie Giuliani. We're joined by Robert and Arthur. I was just looking on your website here. Are you there, Rob?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just looking on your website, and I noticed you've got quite a few things here on tickets, speeding tickets, quote, speeding violations. This is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. And again, I don't know the laws up in Canada, but I'm assuming from what you got here that it's pretty much the same thing. They don't have the right to give you speeding tickets. There's no law.
You know what one of the things that I figured out, can anyone cut your hair, Charles, without your consent? If I came at you with scissors and tried to cut one hair on your head without your consent, would that be assault?
Yeah.
no one can cut your hair. We can't paint